aside from Star Wars, Spectre was my most anticipated movie of the fall. I love the Bond movies. I've loved the Daniel Craig films. I enjoy even Quantum of Solace to a certain degree. It's got its flaws here and there, but it's enjoyable. So I was pretty excited for Spectre, considering the fact that we were going to see the organization of Spectre again for the first time in like, what, 30, 40 years, something like that. I was pretty excited. And then you hear Christoph Waltz is going to be the bad guy. I didn't get more excited. And my consensus for this movie is that Spectre was fun. There are a lot of flaws with this movie, for sure. But overall, this movie is a lot of fun, in the same way a classic Bond movie would actually be. So in Spectre, James Bond discovers someone from his past who's played by Christoph Waltz, and it leads him on a trail to figure things out with Léa Seydoux, from Blues Warm's Color and Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, who I totally forgot she was in Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol until one of my friends kind of reminded me about that. I guess she likes doing them spy movies. And along with that, you have the MI6 who are threatened to be shut down by another higher branch of government. And basically, I'll get with my problems with the MI6 subplot, but that's all you really need to know. There's a lot of good to be had in this movie. First off, Daniel Craig is James Bond. Every single time I see him as Bond, he just kills it every time. Every single time you kind of watch him, you're just kind of like, yeah, that's Bond. And I will say at this time around, he does feel more like classic James Bond. He reminds me so much of Pierce Brosnan in that way, which I know can sound a little negative to some, because I know a lot of people don't like the Brosnan films. I personally love the Brosnan films. Brosnan's my second favorite Bond. So when I see Bond acting so smooth, and he's got his sense of humor and everything like that, I actually get pretty happy about that, because I'm just kind of like, yeah, we've actually gotten to this point of the Daniel Craig films. We've actually seen him become classic Bond, and it got me pretty happy. Like, literally, Bond's introduction into this movie, it is classic Bond. Like, you watch it, you're just kind of like, yeah, that is something Brosnan would totally do. So I'm pretty stoked. I was pretty stoked about that. And aside from that, Léa Seydoux was really good in the movie too, as well as Monica Bellucci as the Bond girls. They did their jobs really, really well, and they were really good. But also seeing the returning members like Q and Moneypenny and M, they're all really good in this movie, and you see more of the M and Bond relationship this time around, and it is more classic, Bond in that sense. You know what I mean? Where Q would, tell Bond his mission, he would tell him his gadgets, and Bond would just kind of just sort of pass up. He'd just be like, yeah, whatever, and then he uses the gadgets and it saves his ass, and you're just kind of like, yeah, that is what I remember about Bond. And the movie's also really funny too. I was surprised about how much humor there was in this movie, because something about the Daniel Craig Bonds, they've had a lot of funny moments, but it's kind of like subtle, dry type of moments. And I'm not saying that in this movie there's a lot of there's like laugh out loud comedy moments in this movie. There are moments that are pretty funny to a certain degree. So I was pretty happy about that. And the movie is shot extremely well. Like, this is like one of those. I'm not a type of dude who just says, "Oh, that movie was shot really well," because I don't really feel like I'm qualified enough to say that. But generally speaking, I think this Bond movie was shot extremely well. From the opening tracking shot of the movie, you're just kind of like, "Holy fuck! This is incredible, and it's so well shot." And the action sequences are shot extremely well too. It's great. It's great. And the fact that you do see a lot of classic Bond moments, like there's a scene that happens with a car seat that is classic Bond in a certain sense. I won't give it away for those of you who haven't seen the movie yet, but it does feel like classic Bond. Ultimately, my biggest disappointment with this movie is in fact Christoph Waltz. Now, let me get this straight. I think Christoph Waltz did a fine job for the time that he was in, and I emphasize the time that he's in because pretty much he's in the movie for like three scenes of the movie, which is kind of a waste, because you got Christoph Waltz in the movie. You've got an incredible actor as a Bond villain, and whenever Christoph Waltz plays a villain, you're kind of like, it's shit's getting real right here. And like, you see his interaction in the movie, you see him in the trailer where he's, his face is all shadowed out and everything like that. And at the beginning, and right there, you're just kind of like, yeah, this is gonna be your bad guy for the whole movie. We're gonna see him throughout the whole thing. And basically, you see him in three more scenes after that. Christoph Waltz in this movie felt more like an extended cameo than than a like legit Bond villain. And that's sad because I honestly was so looking forward to Christoph Waltz as a Bond villain. Like I'm gonna compare Christoph Waltz in this movie to my favorite Bond villain of all time, Alex Trevelyan from Goldeneye. You know, Sean Bean in Goldeneye. We see Sean Bean at the very beginning of the movie. He gets killed. You know, we're kind of, we think he's dead, but he comes back halfway through the movie and he's revealed to be the bad guy. And he's our bad guy for the rest of the movie. We see him all the way throughout, giving orders, killing people, things like that. Almost kind of like a real Bond villain does. And then like the later Bond villains like Elliot Carver or Electra King or Le Chiffre or Silva, they are classic Bond villains in that sense, that they do have those Bond villain tropes, and that's why we enjoy them so much because they are classic Bond villains. With Christoph Waltz in this movie, he feels more like an extended cameo. I honestly kind of felt like Andrew Scott was more of the Bond villain in this movie than Christoph Waltz. Speaking of Andrew Scott in this movie, I get to one of my other problems with this movie, and that is the MI6 storyline. Basically, the MI6 storyline in this movie is that MI6 is it gets shut down by a different branch of government, and then that government's going to use surveillance and Big Brother as as the newest form of defense, and how they say the old spy ways are done. And yeah, I know you're thinking to yourself, I've heard that plot before. And you have. You saw it earlier this year in Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. And then even earlier than that in Captain America the Winter Soldier. Even the climax of this movie is really similar to Captain America the Winter Soldier. The problem with that is just the fact that, Rogue Nation and the Winter Soldier did that type of storyline really, really well and unique. With Spectre, it didn't really feel like they did it really well and unique. They just kind of did it really kind of by the numbers in a certain sense. Which is, it kind of does disappoint me. I mean, I do get the fact that they wanted to make M and Moneypenny and Q a bigger part of the story, which I do like a lot about this movie. I especially like that they have more to do rather than just sit behind a desk and shout orders. The thing is, if you're going to do it, at least do it with a storyline that is actually exciting and not just something that you've felt like you've seen many times before and done better. Overall, Spectre has a lot of good to outweigh the bad. There are a lot of fun moments in this movie, and then there's some moments that I just felt like were wasted or they could have done a lot better. Spectre is that Bond movie in terms of the Craig Bond movies that is kind of in the middle. It's better than Quantum of Solace, but not as good as Casino Royale or Skyfall, if that makes any sense. I do enjoy Spectre a lot, and I certainly will give it a rating of a B. Like you said, I think you should go check this movie out. It's a lot of fun. It's great to see Bond again, and I do kind of want Daniel Craig to return as Bond one last time. But if not, then I'm totally cool with them changing a different actor. So that being said, what do you think about Spectre, and who would you like to see be the new Bond? I'm honestly kind of torn between Idris Elba or Henry Cavill. I think either one of those guys could do Bond perfectly. As always, comment, like, subscribe, and I'm out.